The most seductive political error of our time isn't corruption or tyranny, it's the belief that human societies can be perfected through rational planning. This delusion, which I've spent decades observing and analyzing, treats politics as if it were engineering. Identify the problem, apply the correct technique, achieve the desired result. Yet observe what happens when this approach meets the complexity of human life. The urban renewal projects that destroyed communities they meant to improve. The educational reforms that diminished rather than enhanced learning. The social programs that perpetuated the very problems they sought to solve. This isn't mere policy failure, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what politics actually is. Today, we'll explore how rationalist thinking infiltrates every aspect of our political life, why it consistently produces unintended consequences, and what authentic political wisdom offers instead. The stakes couldn't be higher. Our capacity to live together peacefully depends on understanding the difference between technical problems and the art of politics. Chapter 1: The Architecture of Rationalist Thinking. The rationalist believes human affairs can be conducted like a science laboratory. He approaches politics armed with abstract principles, statistical models, and theoretical frameworks, confident that proper methodology will yield desired outcomes. This isn't simple reform, it's a complete reconceptualization of political activity. Consider how this manifests in contemporary America. Urban planners design communities based on traffic flow algorithms and demographic projections, then wonder why these spaces feel sterile and unwelcoming. Education reformers implement curricula based on learning theories and standardized metrics, then discover they've mechanized what should be a deeply human encounter. Social engineers design welfare systems according to economic models and behavioral assumptions, then find they've created dependency rather than empowerment. The rationalist's error isn't in his desire for improvement, that's admirable. His mistake lies in believing that political activity resembles technical manipulation. He treats traditions as obstacles rather than repositories of wisdom. He sees complexity as inefficiency rather than the natural condition of human life. Most fundamentally, he confuses having reasons for being reasonable. This confusion runs deep in American political culture. We constantly hear demands for evidence-based policy, as if governing resembled medical research. We expect politicians to present detailed plans for complex problems, as if certainty were possible in human affairs. We judge success by whether outcomes match intentions, ignoring the wisdom embedded in unintended but beneficial consequences. The rationalist delusion isn't merely intellectual, it's profoundly moral. It assumes that those who possess correct techniques have the right to reshape other people's lives. It treats inherited ways of life as material for experimentation. It confuses the confidence born of expertise with the wisdom required for political judgment. Chapter 2: The Seduction of Technical Solutions. Why does rationalist thinking prove so attractive, especially to educated Americans? Because it promises what human beings desperately crave: control over uncertainty, solutions to suffering, progress through knowledge. The rationalist doesn't merely offer better policies, he offers scientific certainty in an inherently uncertain world. This seduction operates through several mechanisms. First, it flatters our intelligence. The rationalist approach suggests that political problems yield to analysis, that clever people can discover the right answers. Second, it satisfies our moral urgency. If we possess techniques for eliminating poverty, why tolerate it? If we understand how to optimize education, why accept mediocrity? Third, it appeals to our democratic sensibilities. Rational methods appear objective, free from the prejudices and privileges of traditional authority. Yet observe what happens when this mindset encounters actual political life. The war on poverty applied sophisticated economic analysis to eliminate want, yet poverty persisted while family structures weakened. Educational psychology promised to optimize learning, Yet standardized testing often diminished rather than enhanced genuine education. Urban planning offered scientific approaches to community design, yet many planned communities lacked the vitality of organic neighborhoods. These aren't isolated failures, they're predictable consequences of treating politics as applied science. Political life involves what I call practical knowledge, the kind of understanding that comes from participation rather than observation, from experience rather than theory. A successful teacher knows things about learning that no educational psychology textbook contains. A thriving community embodies insights about human flourishing that no urban planning manual captures. The rationalist misses this dimension entirely. He sees explicit principles where practical knowledge operates through inherited habits. He seeks universal solutions where wisdom requires attention to particular circumstances. He demands immediate results where authentic improvement unfolds gradually through countless small adjustments. Most dangerously, the rationalist's confidence in his methods blinds him to their limitations. When policies fail, he blames poor implementation rather than flawed assumptions. When communities resist his improvements, he attributes this to ignorance rather than wisdom. When traditions prove more durable than his innovations, he sees obstruction rather than accumulated experience. Chapter 3: The Destruction of Practical Wisdom. The most devastating consequence of rationalist politics isn't policy failure, it's the systematic erosion of practical wisdom. Every society depends on countless forms of inherited knowledge: how to raise children, conduct business, resolve disputes, maintain communities. This wisdom doesn't exist in textbooks, it lives in practices, habits, and tacit understandings passed down through generations. Rationalist thinking treats this inheritance as primitive superstition awaiting scientific enlightenment. Consider how this plays out in American education. Traditional liberal learning aimed to initiate students into civilization's great conversation, literature, history, philosophy, the arts. This education didn't promise immediate utility, it cultivated judgment, taste, and the capacity for thoughtful engagement with human experience. Progressive education reform replaced this with relevant curricula designed around learning objectives and measurable outcomes. The result? Students may master specific skills but lack the cultural literacy necessary for genuine education. They can analyze data but struggle to engage with beauty, complexity, or moral ambiguity. They possess information but lack wisdom. This pattern repeats across every dimension of American life. Medical practice becomes algorithmic, reducing the physician's art to protocol compliance. Legal education emphasizes technique over jurisprudence, producing lawyers who know procedures but lack understanding of law's deeper purposes. Business schools teach management science while ignoring the practical wisdom required for genuine leadership. Even family life suffers rationalist encroachment. Child rearing becomes parenting, guided by expert advice rather than inherited wisdom. Child development psychology promises scientific approaches to raising children, yet many parents feel less confident than their grandparents who relied on tradition and common sense. Marriage becomes a contract optimized for mutual benefit rather than a covenant embedding couples in larger patterns of meaning. The tragedy isn't that scientific knowledge lacks value, it's immensely valuable within its proper sphere. The tragedy is that rationalist thinking cannot recognize its own limitations. It treats every aspect of human experience as material for technical manipulation. It assumes that explicit knowledge can replace tacit understanding, that universal principles can substitute for particular wisdom, that planning can improve upon the spontaneous order of human cooperation. When practical wisdom erodes, politics becomes increasingly technical and bureaucratic. Citizens become clients receiving services rather than participants in self-government. Representatives become managers implementing programs rather than statesmen exercising judgment. Democracy itself becomes procedural rather than substantive, a method for aggregating preferences rather than a way of life requiring civic virtue. Chapter 4: The Poverty of Ideological Thinking. Perhaps nowhere does rationalist delusion manifest more clearly than in ideological politics. An ideology promises comprehensive understanding of social problems and systematic solutions based on coherent principles. Whether progressive, libertarian, or nationalist, each ideology claims to possess the key to human flourishing. Each reduces political complexity to manageable formulas. This ideological thinking profoundly distorts political judgment. Instead of attending to particular circumstances, the ideologist applies universal principles. Instead of balancing competing goods, he pursues single values to their logical extreme. Instead of accepting the inherent tensions of political life, he seeks systematic resolution through correct theory. Consider how this plays out in contemporary American debates. Progressive ideology diagnoses social problems as consequences of oppression and inequality, proposing redistribution and social engineering as universal remedies. Libertarian ideology attributes difficulties to government interference, advocating market solutions and individual choice as panaceas. Nationalist ideology blames foreign influence and cultural change, offering tribal solidarity and strong leadership as cure-alls. Each ideology contains insights. Inequality does create problems. Markets do coordinate activity efficiently. Cultural continuity does matter for human flourishing. But ideological thinking transforms these partial truths into comprehensive worldviews that blind adherents to contrary evidence and alternative approaches. The ideologist suffers from what we might call theoretical arrogance, the belief that abstract understanding can master political reality. He approaches complex situations armed with predetermined solutions. When these solutions fail, he doesn't question his principles, he blames implementation or opposition. When evidence contradicts his theory, he dismisses it as biased or irrelevant. This creates what I observe as the politics of certainty. Ideological politicians promise clear answers to complex questions. They offer voters the comfort of knowing who to blame and what to do. They transform political choice into intellectual commitment. Vote for the candidate who shares your worldview rather than the one who demonstrates practical wisdom. Yet authentic political life requires what I call the politics of skepticism, a fundamental humility about what government can accomplish and how social change occurs. The skeptical politician doesn't lack convictions, he holds them lightly, ready to modify them when experience suggests better approaches. He doesn't promise comprehensive solutions, he offers prudent responses to particular problems. This skeptical attitude seems unpalatable to Americans raised on ideological thinking. We want our politicians to stand for something, to offer vision and leadership, to inspire us with grand purposes. Yet observe what happens when ideological fervor captures political institutions. Policy becomes rigid, compromise becomes betrayal, and opponents become enemies. The ordinary business of democratic government, negotiation, adjustment, gradual improvement, becomes impossible. The alternative isn't cynicism or indifference. It's recognizing that politics is a practical art requiring judgment rather than a theoretical science admitting of systematic solutions. It's understanding that political wisdom comes from experience rather than ideology, from tradition rather than innovation, from humility rather than certainty. Chapter 5: The Triumph of Technique over Judgment. In my years observing American political life, I've witnessed technique gradually displacing judgment across every sphere of governance. This isn't merely a shift in methods, it's a fundamental transformation in how we conceive political activity itself. Where once statesmanship required practical wisdom gained through experience, we now expect technical expertise certified by credentials. Consider how this manifests in contemporary policymaking. Economic policy becomes macroeconomic modeling, with PhD economists promising to fine-tune prosperity through monetary and fiscal adjustments. Environmental policy becomes environmental science, with technical experts calculating optimal carbon pricing and emissions targets. Healthcare policy becomes health economics, with analysts modeling system efficiencies and outcome optimization. Each technical approach offers genuine insights within its domain. The tragedy lies in mistaking partial knowledge for comprehensive understanding. The economists' models capture certain aspects of economic activity but miss the complex web of cultural practices that make markets possible. The environmental scientists' measurements reveal important trends but cannot weigh these against competing human goods. The health economists' calculations illuminate cost structures but ignore what patients actually value about medical care. This technical orientation fundamentally alters political discourse. Instead of deliberating about competing visions of the good life, we argue about which experts to trust. Instead of exercising judgment about complex trade-offs, we defer to those who claim scientific authority. Instead of taking responsibility for difficult choices, we seek objective solutions that remove the burden of decision. The result is what I observe as the expertocracy, government by those who possess certified knowledge rather than practical wisdom. Regulatory agencies multiply, staffed by specialists who understand their particular domain but lack broader political judgment. Congressional hearings become technical briefings rather than forums for democratic deliberation. Presidential candidates tout their policy teams rather than their character and experience. This expertocracy promises rational administration free from political bias. Yet observe its actual operation. Technical experts disagree constantly, their models contradicted by events, their predictions falsified by experience. What they present as objective analysis often reflects unstated assumptions about human nature and social organization. Their technical solutions create new problems requiring additional technical solutions in an endless cycle of intervention. Meanwhile, the practical wisdom necessary for authentic political judgment atrophies. Politicians become managers implementing expert recommendations rather than statesmen exercising prudent leadership. Citizens become consumers of services rather than participants in self-government. Democratic deliberation becomes technical education about complex policy details rather than conversation about shared purposes and common goods. The irony is profound. In pursuit of more rational government, we've created a system less capable of intelligent response to actual conditions. Technical expertise excels at solving well-defined problems with clear metrics. Political life presents poorly defined challenges requiring balancing of incommensurable goods. Technical thinking demands precision and certainty. Political judgment requires tolerance for ambiguity and acceptance of fallibility. This doesn't mean rejecting technical knowledge, it means understanding its proper place within political life. Technical expertise should inform political judgment, not replace it. Expert analysis should serve democratic deliberation, not substitute for it. Scientific knowledge should humble political pretensions, not legitimate them. Chapter 6: The Conservative Alternative to Rationalist Politics. Against this rationalist delusion, authentic conservative thinking offers a fundamentally different approach to political life. This isn't mere opposition to change. It's a sophisticated understanding of how beneficial change actually occurs and what kinds of knowledge prove most reliable in human affairs. Conservative political wisdom begins with humility about what any individual or generation can know. We inherit complex societies shaped by countless previous decisions, embodying insights we cannot fully articulate or consciously reconstruct. These inherited arrangements aren't perfect, but they represent accumulated experience about what works in human affairs, knowledge tested by time rather than validated by theory. This perspective profoundly alters how we approach political problems. Instead of seeking comprehensive solutions based on abstract principles, conservative thinking favors incremental adjustments guided by practical experience. Instead of trusting expert predictions about complex outcomes, it prefers the proven wisdom embedded in successful practices. Instead of pursuing theoretical consistency, it accepts the productive tensions that characterize healthy societies. Consider how this applies to American challenges. Rather than redesigning educational systems according to learning theories, conservative reform would build upon institutions that demonstrably succeed, strengthening successful schools rather than experimenting with untested innovations. Rather than restructuring healthcare according to economic models, it would preserve the doctor-patient relationship while making incremental improvements to expand access and control costs. This conservative approach frustrates those who want dramatic progress toward ideal outcomes. Why accept gradual improvement when systematic reform promises comprehensive solutions? Why preserve imperfect institutions when rational reconstruction could optimize them? Why trust inherited wisdom when scientific knowledge offers superior understanding? The conservative response involves recognizing the limits of human knowledge and the complexity of social change. Most attempted improvements produce unintended consequences, often worse than the original problems. Most rational reconstructions destroy valuable features that weren't consciously understood. Most systematic reforms fail because they cannot anticipate how people will actually respond to new arrangements. This isn't pessimism, it's realism about the conditions under which beneficial change occurs. Human societies improve through countless small experiments, most of which fail, with successful innovations gradually spreading through imitation and adaptation. This evolutionary process cannot be planned or accelerated without destroying the conditions that make it possible. Conservative politics therefore emphasizes preservation over innovation, gradual reform over systematic reconstruction, practical wisdom over theoretical knowledge. It values institutions that have proven their worth over time rather than innovations that promise future benefits. It trusts the decentralized knowledge embedded in market processes, cultural traditions, and local communities rather than the centralized expertise of planners and reformers. This doesn't mean rejecting all change or defending every existing arrangement. It means understanding that beneficial change requires continuity with the past, that innovation builds upon tradition rather than replacing it, that wisdom comes from experience rather than abstract reasoning. It means recognizing that the burden of proof lies with those who propose change, not those who counsel patience. Chapter 7: Recovering Political Wisdom in Democratic Life. How then shall we conduct politics in a democratic age infected by rationalist presumptions? How can practical wisdom reassert itself against the seductive promises of technical expertise? How can Americans recover the art of self-government without abandoning the genuine benefits of modern knowledge? The path forward requires recognizing that democratic politics is itself a tradition, a particular way of life requiring specific virtues and practices. Democracy isn't merely a method for aggregating preferences or a technique for peaceful power transfer. It's a form of human association requiring citizens capable of judgment, deliberation, and compromise. This democratic tradition developed gradually through centuries of experience with self-government. It embodies insights about human nature, the conditions for peaceful cooperation, and the proper relationship between rulers and ruled. These insights aren't explicitly formulated in constitutional texts, they live in the habits, expectations, and tacit understandings that make democratic life possible. Rationalist thinking threatens this tradition by treating democracy as a technical problem requiring expert solutions. When citizens are seen as consumers of government services rather than participants in self-rule, democratic character atrophies. When complex policy issues are reduced to technical questions, democratic deliberation becomes impossible. When political choices are presented as applications of abstract principles, the practical wisdom necessary for judgment withers. Recovering authentic democratic life requires several transformations in how Americans approach politics. First, we must restore respect for practical knowledge over theoretical expertise. The farmer's understanding of his land, the teacher's knowledge of her students, the merchant's grasp of his market, these forms of wisdom often prove more reliable than abstract models and statistical projections. Second, we must rebuild institutions that cultivate democratic character. Local government, voluntary associations, religious communities, and civic organizations all provide opportunities for citizens to practice the arts of deliberation, compromise, and collective action. These institutions cannot be designed by experts, they must grow organically from shared purposes and common concerns. Third, we must recover appreciation for the complexity and difficulty of political life. Democracy doesn't promise perfect outcomes or eliminate human suffering. It offers a way of living together peacefully despite disagreement, a method for making collective decisions without claiming infallible knowledge, a form of government that acknowledges human fallibility while enabling human dignity. This recovery cannot be achieved through rational planning, that would replicate the very error we seek to avoid. It requires what I call political education, not indoctrination in correct principles, but initiation into the practices and virtues that democratic life requires. This education occurs through participation rather than instruction, through experience rather than theory. Americans possess enormous advantages in this recovery. Our traditions of local self-government, voluntary association, and constitutional constraint provide tested frameworks for democratic life. Our federal system allows experimentation with different approaches while maintaining national unity. Our diverse society offers rich resources for the kind of conversation that democracy requires. Yet these advantages will prove worthless if we continue treating politics as applied science rather than practical art. The choice before us is clear: we can pursue the rationalist delusion until it destroys the conditions for peaceful cooperation, or we can recover the political wisdom that makes democratic life possible. The future of American democracy may depend on which path we choose. Conclusion. The rationalist delusion represents more than mistaken political philosophy, it threatens the very possibility of civilized life. When we treat human affairs as material for technical manipulation, we destroy the conditions that make genuine politics possible. When we seek systematic solutions to complex problems, we undermine the practical wisdom that enables peaceful cooperation. When we trust expert knowledge over inherited experience, we sever our connection to the traditions that sustain us. Yet recognizing this delusion opens possibilities for authentic political recovery. We can rediscover the art of politics as distinct from the science of administration. We can restore respect for the practical knowledge embedded in successful institutions. We can rebuild democratic character through participation in the demanding work of self-government. This recovery won't produce the rational perfection that ideology promises. It offers something better: the possibility of wise response to the permanent conditions of human life. It acknowledges that politics involves irreducible uncertainty while providing resources for intelligent action. It accepts that improvement occurs gradually through countless adjustments while maintaining hope for beneficial change. The path forward requires intellectual humility, respect for tradition, and commitment to the patient work of democratic citizenship. It demands that we resist the seductive promises of technical solutions while embracing the difficult art of political judgment. Most importantly, it calls us to participate thoughtfully in the great conversation of civilization, adding our voices to the accumulated wisdom of those who came before while preparing the way for those who will follow.